Hey everybody, this is GGB, and today we're going to be talking about what happened yesterday and all the ranked teams that are playing today. There's a lot of them, so I like to get just straight into this thing. Remember, I picked the only real conference I'm probably going to get to. I could have done Mountain West, but I just didn't feel like Boise State was going to be upset. I was right. Dayton did pull off the upset against St. Louis, and Hop Duquesne. I don't know how. Duquesne. I don't know how to pronounce this school. Richmond and St. Louis all the way up to 5th place. It's going to take a little bit to pass St. Bonaventure considering how well they're playing, but great win by Dayton. There's not a lot of games left in the season. If you look at the rest of Dayton's schedule, there's one game against St. Joseph's, just the chance to hop. St. Bonaventure is not there, but I mean, you kind of have to win the one against St. Joseph's, considering they're completely defeated in Atlantic 10 play. But I could see the final rankings being very similar to what we're seeing right now. But let's get straight into this thing. We have one pretty big East game. Tomorrow we have UConn taking on Villanova. Now, I did the math, and if you're UConn, you really cannot afford to lose this basketball game, because if you lose this basketball game, you're going to fall. Not that far, but St. John's will likely pass you unless they lose their matchup today against DePaul, which seems unlikely, but you can always hope for it if you're UConn. Obviously, that's your safety net, and you'd like DePaul to upset them either way to give you a little bit of breathing room. But if they win, they go to 8-5 in conference, still about 2 games behind Seton Hall's 10-5 in conference. So Seton Hall still has a little bit of advantage of you on 3rd place. Now, UConn's very much a bubble team, so if you are a fan of a team that's on the bubble, for instance, UNC, Syracuse, there's other ones I'm not thinking of right now, you'd be a huge fan of Villanova to win this game today. But if you're a Creighton fan, you're like, yes, sure can go, because if UConn pulls off this upset today against Villanova, Creighton takes the lead in the division. And if you look at the rest of the schedule, there are only like 4 more games left for these teams. You have Creighton only plays DePaul. This is their schedule left. DePaul, Xavier, and Butler, right? Those are 3. They have the big game against Villanova, and that will likely decide the division. Creighton very much holds their destiny in their own hands, especially if they sweep Villanova. So Creighton has a very bright future ahead of it if it just keeps on winning, holds their own future in their hands. Remember, if you're a St. John's fan, obviously you want to win. You can take 4th place in the division, which is pretty impressive, considering almost no one gave you St. John's was supposed to finish next to last in the division, so it's very interesting to see how well St. John's has played so far. So I think that it's going to be interesting, very interesting to see how this comes down the stretch. Now, SEC basketball is an absolute nightmare to figure out, but I spent a lot of time figuring it out. There's a lot of different things that can happen today. There are 3 games with ranked teams, but that doesn't mean a lot can't change with unranked teams. But let's focus on the ranked teams right now. You have at 12 o'clock, Kentucky traveling to number 19, Tennessee. Tennessee are favored by 6.5 in this game on CBS. At 12 o'clock, we have Vanderbilt traveling to number 8, Alabama. Alabama's favored by 15.5 points in this game on the SEC Network. And then at 1 o'clock, we have number 20, Missouri, traveling to South Carolina. Now, the Alabama-Vanderbilt is one of the most it literally makes absolutely no difference who wins that game, because Alabama's going to be top of the division regardless. Vanderbilt's going to be the bottom of the division regardless of what happens today. Plus, if you look at their resume, they'd have to lose all 4 of their remaining games to have anyone, and I mean anyone, even come close to, passing them, which just seems unlikely. The Vanderbilt one is just unlikely, to say the very least. Now, if they lose 3 games, I could see a team passing them, like Arkansas if they win out, and the Arkansas game's pretty much in the air, but the fact is you're not going to lose to Mississippi State or Auburn. So this basically is that Alabama's already the SEC. That's not the complicated part. If you want to go into actual complicated things, then let's just start, okay? Tennessee, if they win this game, move to 9-5, right? 9-5 would normally put them in 3rd place. Unless LSU wins today, they move to 9-4 and stay in 3rd place. They play Auburn today, so if you're a Tennessee fan, you're hoping for an Auburn upset, so you can move into 3rd place in the division. Now, looking at that, if Tennessee loses, they fall to 8-6, which would, if you do the math, would land them 8-6 would land them behind Florida if Florida wins today against Georgia. Now, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're hoping for a Georgia upset of Florida, so that you get a little bit of wiggle room so that technically you stay in 4th place. Now, if Ole Miss wins today against Mississippi State at 5 o'clock, then they will be right on your tail. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're a fan of Georgia today beating Florida, and then a huge fan of Kentucky upsetting Tennessee. That puts you in 4th place. Confused so far? Because it gets even worse. If Missouri loses, they go to 6-7. Now, there's a lot of different things that can happen here if you actually do the math. Kentucky will pass Missouri if they are able to pull off the upset today against Tennessee. So if you're a Kentucky fan, you're hoping you win, and Missouri gets upset today by South Carolina. Now, Georgia can come very close to passing Missouri. I believe they do pass Missouri with a win and upset of Florida. So that's something to look out for. If you're a Missouri fan, you're hoping for if Ole Miss loses and Florida loses today, Missouri can hop up into 5th place in the SEC. Now, if Missouri loses, they fall behind Kentucky and Georgia. If Kentucky and Georgia win today, now Kentucky and Georgia could both lose today, which is likely because both the teams are playing they're actually underdogs in the games they're playing in. So, it's an absolute nightmare to figure it out. In South Carolina's case, again, they're not going to move because moving to 4-8 isn't going to change anything, and falling to 3-9 also not going to change anything against Texas A&M. They are basically stuck where they are for at least the time being. Although winning the game against Missouri it would be helpful to getting closer to Mississippi State. Plus, Mississippi State would lose. Again, I did the math. It wouldn't be enough for South Carolina to overtake Mississippi State's spot, but it would make it very close, only 2-3 percentages off. So definitely something to look forward to if you're a South Carolina Gamecocks fan. Now, I hope you guys are excited about that because the Big 12 is a little bit complicated, but not that complicated. Now, Texas and West Virginia play today, and whoever wins that game is likely going to be 4th place unless some crazy upsets happen today. They move to 8-4 in conference. 8-4 in conference, and that's basically what happens. Now, Texas, West Virginia. Now, if West Virginia loses, or Texas loses, they both fall down as they don't fall down. I'm sorry, I'm bad at explaining this. Texas Tech, if they win today against Kansas, they move to 7-5. Right? If West Virginia loses, let's say, they also move down to 7-5. Now, if you're a Texas Tech fan, you're actually a Texas fan today because if Texas beats West Virginia, then Texas Tech can pass West Virginia for that spot. Also, if Texas Tech beats Kansas, then Kansas falls, not that far, but behind Oklahoma and what would be Texas. Now, ideal scenario, Texas can technically get to 2nd place today, but a lot of things have to go right. Number one, they have to beat West Virginia. Obviously, you hold that in your own hands. You can hope for a Texas Tech beating Kansas. That's hopeful. That's also a scenario that's possible. Now, Oklahoma also plays Iowa State. Now, Iowa State would not be ideal if you're a Kansas State fan. A win there would be very bad for a Kansas State fan. But if Iowa State was to upset Oklahoma, Texas would move into 2nd place. Now, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're rooting for Texas Tech today over Kansas because then you can move into 2nd place. Okay, that's basically the Big 12. It's not that complicated, not as complicated as the SEC, but there are some stuff that can happen today. Big 10, only one ranked team playing today, and it's Illinois. Now, Normally, I wouldn't give Minnesota a real shot against Illinois, but again, Minnesota's 13-1 at home this year, and they are playing in their home stadium. Now, if they were traveling to Illinois, Champaign, there would be absolutely no way I could see them winning, but they have been extremely great on their home court, so I don't know, this really could be a kind of a toss-up game. Now, if Illinois was to lose this basketball game, Ohio State would take second place in the Big Ten, so definitely something to look forward to. If you're an Ohio State fan, a huge Minnesota fan tonight. Minnesota would also move up a spot with a win, being able to pass Maryland. So, if you're a Minnesota fan, if you're a Maryland fan, obviously you're against the Golden Gophers tonight. And if you're a Buckeyes fan, you're a huge Golden Gophers supporter tonight. So that's something to look out for. That's basically the Big Ten for you. There are some other stuff happening. In Indiana plays Michigan State. That affects stuff, but again, not ranked. We're not going to go over that. We can't go into every game. Now, Virginia and Florida State both play today. Virginia is playing Duke, and Florida State is playing Pitt. Now, here's where things get really interesting if you're a fan of the ACC basketball. Now, Virginia Tech fans, Virginia Tech hasn't played in a gosh darn long time. They have not played since February 6th. I'd like to point out that was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. They're supposed to play on Tuesday of this week, but let's see if that game actually gets played. But theoretically, Virginia Tech can move into second place this week without having to play a week game in 2 weeks, which is very impressive if you ask me. Now, if Pitt is able to pull off the upset of Florida State, Virginia Tech moves into second place. Pitt would be able to hop Notre Dame 100%. I don't believe... Well, actually, Notre Dame does have a game today against Syracuse. So if you're a Pitt fan, you're actually rooting for Syracuse today. I know it feels weird. But Pitt would be hoping for a Syracuse win. Obviously, you want yourself to win. And then you're also hoping for Georgia Tech to lose to Miami today. Miami to pull off the upset. Because if that happens, they can hop up 2 spots past Notre Dame and Georgia Tech, be right behind Duke. Now, if you're a Pitt fan, also hoping that Duke loses today against Virginia. That way, you're just very close to tying Duke, being there, very close to Duke. But if you're a Florida State fan, if Florida State was to win this basketball game, they move to 9-2. By the way, if Pitt loses, they fall to 5-8, 9-9. It's not a huge deal, but they'd be very close to NC State, and I don't believe they've played them, so I don't know how the tiebreaker would work out. Pitt's still on NC State's schedule. They're supposed to play February 28th. So again, not sure how that would work out, but NC State, obviously, a pretty big opponent of Florida State today, especially since NC State plays Wake Forest. So Wake Forest, technically if you're an NC State fan, you're rooting for Florida State today so you can move past Pitt. That's basically the gist of it. Now, if you're a Florida State fan, you're hoping you win against Pitt, right? And then Virginia loses against Duke, because in that scenario, Florida State actually takes the lead in the ACC, takes the crown, if you will, and that's very good if you're a Florida Seminoles fan. With a win for Duke, they can move up past Syracuse as long as Syracuse loses today against Notre Dame. So, again, if you're a Duke fan, you're rooting against Syracuse. If you're a Pitt fan, you're rooting for Syracuse. If you're also a Duke fan, you're rooting against UNC today. They're playing Louisville. So that's something. So if you're a Duke fan, you're a pretty huge fan of Notre Dame and UNC basketball. Notre Dame and Louisville basketball today. If you're a Florida State fan, you're a pretty huge supporter of Duke basketball today. And if you're a Virginia fan, you're a huge supporter of Pitt basketball today. If you're an NC State fan, you're a huge supporter of you're a huge supporter of Florida State basketball, and weirdly enough, Syracuse basketball, hoping they can beat Notre Dame. And if NC State's able to pull it off against Wake Forest, they can actually hop Pitt and Notre Dame. And if you're a Pitt fan, you're a Syracuse fan and a Miami fan. Is that complicated enough for you? Obviously, you didn't see the SEC portion. On Pac-12 basketball, honestly not that complicated. really. Arizona plays USC. USC's not moving out of first place regardless as if they lose today or not, but it would be very nice for a team like UCLA because they play Arizona State today. They can have the same in-conference record. Just overall record would be worse for UCLA, and the tiebreaker would go to USC considering USC was able to beat them a few weeks back. Now, if Arizona was to lose this basketball game, Oregon State was to win it today against, I believe they play Colorado, then Oregon State would be able to pass Arizona. So that's something to look forward to. If you're a Beavers fan, you're a pretty big Trojan fan today. And you move into the Mountain West. Again, not much is going to change here. Actually, a decent amount could change here. I'm wrong. Now, Fresno State is able to pull off the upset. Nothing is going to change. And if they don't pull off the upset, they likely will be passed by UNLV. So, but UNLV does play on Sunday, so you can just hope that San Jose State pulls off the upset against UNLV. But if you're a Fresno State fan, kind of need the win here so UNLV doesn't pass you. Now, if you're a San Diego State fan, you really want this win because it would put you in the same conference record as Colorado State, and then you would have a better overall record than them, and you can pass them for second place in the Mountain West. And the fact is, I don't know how many Mountain West fans Mountain West teams are really going to be coming out of the Mountain West. Obviously, you probably are going to get Boise State and probably San Diego State, considering how highly rated San Diego State is. Even though Boise State, I believe, has put together an amazing year, an amazing basketball team, really. I don't know. I think, if I had to guess, I think Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, and I'd be leaving Utah State likely out of it. Now, if you move on to WCC basketball, Gonzaga's playing San Diego, and now San Diego's playing. If they lose, which is likely, they're going to fall to second to last place behind St. Mary's. Only good thing is, if you're San Diego, you cannot fall further than that because Portland has just been god-awful this year, having a 6-13 overall record, 0-10 in conference play, which makes me wonder, who the heck did they beat? If you're wondering, Seattle beat Portland. Portland has been able to beat William Jessup, Northwest Washington, Portland State, weirdly enough, Oregon State, and College of Idaho, and Montana State. Although Montana State was a close one, which is bad, not great if you're a Portland Pilots fan. San Diego, with a win, can move pretty far. They can move past Pacific and San Francisco. Fortunately, just based on overall record, they would not be able to pass Santa Clara, but they would be able to pass Pacific and San Francisco. So if you're a Dons fan, you're weirdly enough a Bulldogs fan today. So that's basically what's going on in the WCC. Gonzaga has 100% locked up the division. Really the only thing they're playing for left. They're almost 100% guaranteed to make the tournament. They're really playing for seeding right now. And the fact is, even if BYU was to win their next 3 games against LMU, San Francisco, and St. Mary's, and Gonzaga was to lose their next 3 games, but BYU would only have a 10-3 record. Gonzaga would have a 12-3 record. Gonzaga has locked up the division. They're not going to lose it at this point. So really only going for seeding at this point. So who does GGB think is going to pull off the episode of the day? Personally, I think it's going to be Kansas. I think Kansas is going to be able to defend their home court against Texas Tech. I think the Jayhawks are going to be able to blow it out of the park. I think they're a pretty good basketball team this year. I think they're going to stay in second place in the Big 12. Remember, if I get this upset, I lock up not having to do any dares this week. Now, on the other hand, if I lose this game and there's there's an upset, then I'm going to have to rely on my Sunday pick, which is going to be either that or I'm sitting at 3.5 points, which isn't horrible, but I would like to lock it up before Saturday and Sunday, because Saturday and Sunday are probably the hardest days, because there's 100% going to be an upset on Saturday. So, hey, everybody, this is GGB saying adios, amigos, and go Jayhawks.